Hey, I'm Colleen. Let's write some historical fiction. So, obviously this is my first video about writing historical fiction, so it's not going to be like immediately diving into writing. Here's a little background. I write mainly paranormal romance right now, or fantasy romance, or contemporary romance, but my paranormal romance usually has some glimpses into a past, let's just say, in terms of like a historical setting. And for the past probably 10-ish years of my life, I've had an idea for a historical novel, just a regular historical fiction, not a historical romance. And I've wanted to write it for a very long time, but it is going to involve a lot of research. And I did start writing it when my twins were brand new babies, and then quickly realized that this was not the right time in my life for me to be doing this kind of project. So I decided that 2022 is the year I am going to write this book. Now, this is the kind of book that I don't know if I will necessarily write it all the way through without stopping to write a different one of my books. I do have a couple more books in my witch series that I want to work on at different points during this year, so I might be taking breaks throughout. But the first thing I'm going to do in January and February is what everyone has to do if they are preparing to write a historical fiction piece, and that is I'm going to research the time period that I will be writing in. Now, I am lucky. I am a librarian. I minored in history, and more than that, I have a very good friend who is a professor in the time period that I am working in. So that is probably my biggest step up I have from any other person trying to write historical fiction, is that I have this amazing resource who likes me and helps me, which is wonderful. So to begin my historical fiction research process, I am going to read some books. Now, the time period and place that I am going to be working in, I haven't narrowed it down entirely, but it is sometime between the year 100 CE and 400 CE in the Germania area of Europe. Parts of the story will take place in the province of Gaul during the Roman Empire, and very little will take place in the province of Hispania, which is Spain, and Gaul is France, and Germania is Germany. So those are the settings that I'm looking at and the time period I am looking at. I have a very well-formed story in my head, but I still need to make certain I am writing a convincing and historically accurate piece. One thing I do know about writing historical fiction is that you need certain touch points in order for it to feel rooted in history. So if you're going to write a book that takes place during World War II, you are probably going to include either D-Day, Pearl Harbor, VE Day, VJ Day, Iwo Jima, like all these different battles that were really important. You probably want to include at least one so that your reader understands, like, this is where we are right now. The time period I'm working with doesn't have a lot of those, so I will also be using this research opportunity to find touch points that I can use while I'm writing. So the first two books that I am going to reread are books I actually saved from college, which I saved very few books from college, and I saved no novels, but I did save books from two particular classes I took. I took a class called Roman Empire, and I took a class called The Dark Ages, which was the Dark Ages of Greece and the Dark Ages of Europe in one class. And I saved a lot of those books because I really loved those classes. The first book I'm going to be rereading, most likely in January, is Tacitus's the Agricola and Germania. I'm just going to read the Germania part. I've already read the Agricola part, which is about Britain. It is a document that was written during the time period. So it's not like an archaeological look at Germania during the Roman Empire. It was written by Tacitus, I want to say around the turn of, what do you call that? The millennium? The turn of the millennium? The turn from BC to CE? I have no idea. So that's around the time period, I can tell you for certain. Yeah, so Tacitus was born in 56 CE, so it was written after that. It will give me a good look at life and how Romans viewed the Germans, which is going to be an important part of my story. I don't want to give like too much away, But I've actually already read this for school and once before when I started rereading this. So I have a lot of notes already in this book, which will be helpful. It's also very short. This essay is like 40 pages, I want to say. So I will definitely get that read in January and get my notes down about it. The second book that I have that I'm going to be looking at that is one that I had from college is A History of Private Life. From Pagan Rome to Byzantium, and it is edited by Paul Veyne. Now, as you can see, I have some post-it notes in here. I have already gone through this. I'm not going to reread this entire book. This is like a 600-page book, and a lot of it's not going to have anything to do with the time period I'm looking at. So I will be a good little librarian and go through the index and find any page that has anything to do with Germania, some pages on Gaul and some on Hispania most likely, and just get another look at the time period. When I originally, a few years ago, decided I was going to work on this, I did purchase 2 books, and those are the next ones I'm going to talk about. And this one is The Early Germans, which I did start reading. This is by Malcolm Todd. This was a hard read. Let's see how many pages I got in. I got to page 94, and it's 250 pages. And this was a very dense, hard read, but it had a lot of really good information, just random stuff that you wouldn't necessarily think about, like, did they eat pig? Like stuff like that. When you're like building a world that needs to be historically accurate, you want to make sure that you're having your characters eat the right things and dress the right way and wear their hair correctly. Do the women wear scarves over their hair at this point? I don't think so, but I'm going to double check because that was very much a European thing for a lot of history. And lastly, I have the book Pax Romana, which is by Adrian Goldsworthy. This was recommended by my friend who is the professor as a great read about the Roman Empire at that time period. Now, again, this is going to take place over long periods of time and have a lot of Roman politics in it, which I am not going to spend a lot of time focusing on the lives of emperors and such because it's not going to have a lot to do with the characters I'm writing. This is going to be more about what the Roman military was like, what it was like living outside of Rome, what it was like living inside of Rome. Lastly, I have a curated document that my friend, who's the professor, gave me. That is a history of witchcraft in the Roman Empire. And this is just how lucky I am. I mentioned to her that I was looking into witchcraft practices during the Roman Empire because obviously, even if I'm going to write a historical fiction, there's going to be witches in it. Duh, that's who I am as a writer. I had talked to her about how I was looking for some different witchcraft instances that took place during the Roman Empire. And then she, a couple weeks later, just said, I had no one come in during office hours today. And she literally gave me like a 23-page document with examples of witchcraft in literature written during that time period because she is amazing. So those are the books I'm going to read, and obviously I'm not going to be able to read those all in the month of January. I have a lot of fiction I want to read, but it's going to give me a pretty good start to my research. I also need to do a little bit more research on the clothing, and I want to find some books at the library that will maybe have to do with what the clothing would be in Germania at that time period. And there's other stuff. I don't want to give too much away, but I need to do my big reading. Now, I'm going to make this into a series of videos at what I'm doing at different points while writing this novel throughout 2022, and hopefully help anyone that might need help being steered in the correct direction for historical fiction. So that's a first look at what it's going to be like for me to write a historical fiction, a complete historical fiction, not just a novel with a little bit set in the past. This is going to be a full novel set in the past. I'm really excited. My favorite books are all like historical fiction or historical fantasy, so I am really looking forward to maybe writing a book that would be in my personal top 10 books of all time. Wouldn't that be fantastic? I hope you are having a wonderful, cozy winter day, and that if you are writing, you are excited about what you are writing, and if you are reading, you are completely engulfed in whatever you're reading. I will see you soon. Bye.